Hey guys, good morning. How are you? I didn't trade it. I'm sort of taking a break from trading. I might do some quantitative trading, but single stocks, I mean, I'll do research for you guys, but I don't know if it's productive for me to trade too much. I just get too into it and then I can't work. I don't usually play the intro. I usually play the intro. But I'll start doing that if you want. This might get very weird. Yeah, we're live. Real Fidel cash flow. Base tree, what's up? All right, so what's going on? Netflix down 6%. Intel, Nvidia rebounding. I'm bearish on Intel. I think everyone is. Nova's down a little bit. Kraft down 7%. Mining stocks, silver and gold. Oklo. Corvus up another 7%. Wow. It was 15 when we were talking about it yesterday. That's cool. What is this? I like that. Yeah, Legend is down. Something's going on with Legend. See, where's requests? Oh, here it is. We do live. Yeah, no problem. I just needed a little break around the holidays. It's nothing personal. Well, I guess it is personal. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Apologize for what? I don't know if it's too late to hop into Corvus. I'd keep riding the momentum till it stops, to be honest. I don't see why not. You have to restart my computer? One of my computers. I would short app. Why would you want to buy this? There's just no way this company can be worth 189 billion. It doesn't make sense. Back again. What a crazy company. What a ride. So 30x in 18 months. Morning. Morning, Jonas. How are you still solvent? What are you talking about? Don't make me beat you up electronically. I've been known to pummel you. Oh, sorry, Ricky. I'll try not to make that slurping noise. I know a lot of people don't like that. I'm always sensitive to it IRL, but on the internet, I don't have the same sensitivity. All right, so I was looking at Merck. Did J&J report? I think J&J reported, right? Ooh, stock's down 3%. I used to try to predict J&J's quarter every quarter for a living. And like a 3% move was a lot for J&J. I can listen to the call. Ah, shit.
Extraordinarily impressive 71% reduction in the risk of disease progression, 40% reduction in overall survival, and this is for patients who are refractory to anti-CD38 therapy and lenalidomide therapies. And so you can see the 70% Tecdera and then the 30% for the Tec-9 data. And then when you bring Carvykti in, Carvykti is the most successful CAR T therapy. We just announced we're over 10,000 patients who've been infused with this, and this is a single dose therapy with really a tremendous shot at what we would count as cure. And we're the only CAR T therapy that's got that superior overall survival versus the standard of care. And so really when you take a look at what the goals are for that patient, what their prior lines of therapy would be and what the practice setting is, J&J now has an option for really every one of those patients in that second line, third line setting. So we see a lot of growth potential ahead for these agents, as well as Darzalex in the front line setting.
Yeah, maybe to get into your MRD, but first just to supplement a little bit, I'd also note that the Tec-Bailey regimens, whether it's monotherapy in CD38 refractory patients or the combo with Darzalex in patients who are CD38 naive or have been exposed but still remain sensitive. These are dexamethasone-free regimens, which means the patients aren't on high-dose steroids, which really is an improvement on quality of life. The other thing I wanted to note is that the FDA, in fact, was so impressed with our Majestic 3 data that unsolicited, they contacted us and offered a priority review voucher to accelerate bringing this new regimen to patients. So really excited with that recent interaction with the FDA. Indeed, on MRD, that is exciting for us. Last year, there was an ODAC that endorsed that concept of using this biomarker, if you will, approach to finding those rare residual malignant cells. Much of the evidence behind that, frankly, was pioneered by J&J over the years. So we're excited that that is an option. We are mindful, however, that it's only an option in the United States, so we, at this point, will still have to deliver progression-free and overall survival data for other territories. So I suspect that will continue to be an element of our protocols, but indeed, we will be speaking with the agency about opportunities to accelerate some of our development. And in that regard, I think a place where this could be particularly apropos is with our new tri-specific antibody for myeloma, romantomig, which brings the features of both TEC and TAL into a single molecule with unprecedented efficacy, improved tolerability as well, fewer, for example, of the taste effects that you might see with Talvey, less weight loss, et cetera, really improved tolerability, and then a great convenience that makes it apropos for the community setting with only one step-up dose and Q4-week dosing for monthly dosing. Really excited about the pilot data we're seeing in newly diagnosed myeloma in combination with DARA with that tri-specific, and that could be a really apropos place to discuss with the FDA using MRD negativity.
Thank you. Next question today is coming from Danielle Antalffy from UBS. Your line is now live.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks so much for taking the question. I'll echo everyone's strong end to the year, and Happy New Year. Just a question on this move to higher growth end markets. Appreciate that you've done a lot of and are doing a lot of portfolio pruning now. You mentioned the 70%. In a few years here. I mean, ultimately, I guess it's two parts. Do you see that 70% moving higher, or do you think that's like sort of the aspirational peak? That's the first part. And the second part is, what are some other growth markets, whether it's in innovative medicines or med tech, where you guys aren't participating today that you see to participate over that time frame, whether it's via organic or inorganic moves. Thanks so much for taking the question.
Danielle, thank you. I mean, our aspiration is not to put a limit on the high growth markets in which we participate, and I think we can conservatively say that once we separate ortho, we'll be at least at 70%. And there is tremendous opportunity, even just focused within the three business units we've decided to focus on within MedTech, both in cardiovascular, in surgery, and in vision. I think we've built your confidence around cardiovascular continuing to be a strong double-digit grower. Surgery, one of our profitable businesses where we maintain leadership positions both in contact lens and surgical vision. We believe it's going to be a strong middle to high single-digit grower. And then surgery is the major opportunity to really catapult our growth, and that comes down to our belief in Otava. As you heard from Joaquin, we are absolutely resolute in our commitment to play a bigger role beyond open and laparoscopic surgery in robotics with Otava. And what we are most confident about is that we have something that is unique and different, and something that surgeons and health system CEOs tell us every day that they need. And And so, while we're excited by the recent milestone and the submission for approval, we're just getting started, and what really highlights the fact that this is different is you'll recall that this is a very different regulatory pathway we chose. This is a de novo pathway, and the reason we chose that pathway is that there is no predicate device, nothing that can be compared against. And so this is a novel platform where there's no reference or predicate device. And so, that coupled with the fact that we're going after the U.S. should further reinforce our confidence in the fact that we believe we have something that is really different. Now, we're not stopping just in the U.S. We're building our submissions in a parallel path fashion outside of the U.S. with a focus on Japan and some select U.S. markets. And you will have recalled from the announcement we made 2 weeks ago, we're also already expanding into our next IDE clinical study in the lower abdomen. And so make no mistake that we believe that we can and will be a formidable player in surgical robotics. We don't take the current incumbent for granted by any means, but we do think that presence we have in open, laparoscopic, and soon-to-be robotic surgery give us a right to play and a tremendous opportunity to drive to those high levels of growth that we've committed in the back half of the decade.
And then in innovative medicine, we are looking to expand in a number of really exciting areas right now where we've got clinical work already underway. And so to give maybe a few examples, Rybrevant in head and neck cancer and colorectal cancer, of which there's clinical trials underway. Amave, which we haven't spoken about yet today, but areas such as Sjogren's disease and SLE, lupus, areas of really high unmet medical need. Atopic dermatitis, of which we made a number of key acquisitions and licensing at the end of 2024 that give us a stable of assets there that we're working towards. B-cell malignancies with our Bicar that's in development, and even Milvexian that we're developing in partnership with Bristol Myers Squibb and that we're very, very excited about for atrial fibrillation and secondary stroke prevention. So a number of additional really key diseases that could be growth drivers for us in the future.
Thank you. Next question today is coming from Vamil Divan from Guggenheim Securities. Your line is now live.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the question. So I just want to ask on Inlexo. It's a couple of questions here, but just one, any sort of initial feedback you can share with us in terms of the initial launch and kind of what doctors and patients are saying. If there's any update on when you expect to get a permanent J-code. And then finally, just I see you listed Sunrise 5 data and potential submission on your events list for 2026, so that's good to see. I'm curious if you can just talk about how that data and that how that might impact the addressable population for the product, and then tied to that, Sunrise 3 I thought might come this year. You didn't include that one on the list, so I'm just curious if any update on timing when we might see data from Sunrise 3. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much for the question on Inlexo. So we are really pleased with the launch and what we're seeing in terms of interest and receptivity by both urologists as well as the patients who've had application of the device. As you recall, we've really launched into the BCG unresponsive population, and as you noted, we're actually looking to further expand that through Sunrise 5, the BCG experienced, and then Sunrise 3 population on the BCG naive population. So far, the interest and enthusiasm on this has been really, really robust. We are anticipating the permanent J-code at the beginning of the second quarter, sort of in that April timeframe, which we think is going to be a really nice catalyst for utilization. And so we do continue to believe strongly that this is one of our $5 billion plus assets, and really look forward to getting that permanent J-code in the second quarter. John, do you want to talk about,
Yeah, just, we're making great progress with this lead product in Inlexo, but I would also remind that we see a whole series of innovative products where we use these devices in the bladder to deliver different payloads. The next one on deck is containing erdafitinib. That's the same targeted therapy that is currently marketed as Balversa for metastatic bladder cancer, but here delivered through a unique device, a customized device. It's not the same one as Inlexo, but works in much the same way. to deliver that targeted therapy. There we are focusing on the so-called intermediate risk population, whereas Inlexo is targeted for the high-risk population. So this broadens our coverage of patients with bladder cancer. And just to remind people that localized bladder cancer represents about 600,000 new cases per year and another 400,000 cases annually of patients who've relapsed and are looking for a solution that would allow them to save their bladder. So it's about 1 million patients a year between Inlexo and now TAR-210, the erdafitinib carrying device. We'll be able to really address a very large percentage of these patients with these bladder-sparing technologies. With TAR-210, the success rate we've been seeing with complete responses has been north of 90%. And so we're super excited about that, and there'll be other devices with different payloads to come over time. So we see this as a platform that will address this incredible unmet need, and that will be a big growth driver for J&J. I would finally close by just giving a shout out to our colleagues in MedTech, because this is just a wonderful example of how innovative medicines and MedTech can come together, bringing devices and drugs together in an unprecedented way, and we're looking for more ways to do that in the future.
Thank you. Next question is coming from Shagun Singh from RBC Capital Markets. Your line is now live.
Great. Thank you so much. Joaquin and Joe, could you spend some time and elaborate on your next step with respect to the talc litigation, implications of the initial Daubert decision? I know you indicated it'll be appealed, if reserves need to be stepped up. And then most importantly, what are your plans for an eventual resolution and risk mitigation here? I think this may be contributing to the modest stock down today, even though, you reported strong results and you have a very strong outlook through the end of the decade. Thank you for taking the question.
Yeah, I'll start, Shagun, and then Joaquin, I'll turn it over to you. So thank you very much for the question. And I want to thank you for acknowledging just the strong results and outlook of the business, which is really what is at the heart of Johnson & Johnson. So last night, the special master reviewing the Daubert motions in the talc MDL issued what is known as a report and recommendation. So that really has no legal import until the judge actually accepts this recommendation. The recommendation itself excluded certain aspects of the plaintiff's expert witnesses and their opinions. And simultaneously, the recommendation also endorsed virtually all of our opinions of our experts. However, there were other parts of the recommendation where the special master clearly failed to apply the new federal rules of evidence known as Rule 702, which really reinforced, starting in December of 2023, the gatekeeping responsibilities that the special master should have had. We will certainly appeal those erroneous parts of the recommendation to the district court. Again, this recommendation from the special master has no legal consequence until the appeal is resolved. The bottom line is this is not going to change our strategy. We will continue to aggressively fight in the court system each and every one of these meritless claims. We will do so whether it's at original trial or through appeal. And we will continue to really bring to light the actions of the plaintiffs' bar, the tactics that they use, the third-party litigation financing, all which is really undermining U.S. business and U.S. competitiveness overall. Joaquin?
Thank you, Joe. So, I would tell you and I would tell investors, we have been navigating this talc issue already for a decade. And we have been able to continue to deliver excellent results, invest in our business, and continue to return value to shareholders. So let's focus on the real story here. The real story is our successful 2025, the strong guidance for 2026, and what you said before, our line of sight for double-digit growth in the later part of the decade. This is a clean story for us, one of the cleanest stories in the entire healthcare sector, and we are in a position of strength today. And as Joe said, we are going to continue to fight these meritless claims, and we're going to continue with our strategy of litigating every single one. What I can assure you and all investors is that every single employee of Johnson & Johnson does not get distracted. They wake up every day with the intent to bring new medicines and medical technologies that improve the standard of care of the millions of patients that we serve every day, and that's really our goal. Let's focus on what really matters. Let's don't get distracted.
Thanks, Shagun, and I think we probably have time for one more question.
So our final question today is coming from Alexandria Hammond from Wolfe Research. Your line is now live.
Thanks for taking the question. On milvexian, can you talk a little bit about your confidence in this asset? What do you think you'll need to show to be competitive in what's already a pretty crowded space with another potential next-generation Factor XI from Bayer? And I guess as a quick follow-up, how can you leverage your past experiences commercializing Xarelto to make another multi-billion-dollar opportunity for J&J?
Yeah, so on milvexian, we're expecting data readouts later this year for both secondary stroke as well as atrial fibrillation. We often get asked about atrial fibrillation because the competitor molecule had failed in that indication, and we cite a couple things. One is that milvexian, at least in vitro, is about 10 times more potent than the other molecule that is being developed by another company. And we know from monitoring the APTT biomarker, the thromboplastin time, that we have very effective reductions in clotting at the dose that we have selected for atrial fibrillation, which is 100 milligrams twice a day. So we feel that we've got the right dose and the right study design, so we'll be looking forward to those data later this year.
And we're really excited about the opportunity with milvexian, and what we're really looking to show there is clear superiority in terms of safety and bleeding risk. We know from all of our experience in the market with Xarelto that there are a lot of patients that are not treated or are undertreated because of fear of safety risk, and so we think there's extraordinary need for a highly efficacious and highly safe with low bleeding risk product in the market, both for atrial fibrillation, and then we're very excited about the possibilities in secondary stroke as well. So we're looking forward to this product that we're developing in collaboration with Bristol Myers Squibb. It is absolutely one of our $5 billion plus assets on our list.
Okay, thanks, Alex, and thanks to everyone for your questions and your continued interest in our company. I will now turn the call over to Joaquin for some brief closing remarks.
Thank you to all of you for joining the call today. As we have commented in the call, we are starting the year from a position of strength. We have the strongest portfolio and pipeline in our history, and we have a leading and an expanding position in our 6 key business areas of focus. 2026 will be a year of accelerated growth and expanded impact, and I look forward to sharing our progress with you in the remaining of the year. Thank you very much, and this finalizes the call.
Thank you. This concludes today's Johnson & Johnson's fourth quarter 2025 earnings conference call. You may now disconnect.
Yeah. So Tremfya, holy moly, up 68%, does 1.5 in the quarter, so that's $6 billion annually. And then another amazing quarter from Darzalex, which it's now $4 billion almost. And this drug's close to patent expiry, and it's still growing 27% a year. Pretty incredible result there. Caplyta, I think this is going to be a bad acquisition for J&J. As you can see, I estimated $300 in revenue. It came in at $249. Pretty big miss there. Not much going on for Caplyta. It's just an old antipsychotic. I don't know what got them to pay so much for this drug that's going to be off patent soon. It's a little nuts. But we'll see. Interesting to see Invega Sustenna start to fade. Wondering what's happening there. Really interesting product portfolio in Invega with its long-acting injectable antipsychotic. There's ketamine, Spravato, $2 billion product now. Incredible. I remember developing ketamine 10 or 12 years ago, and people laughed at me. Some people laughed at me, not many. But, you know, one second. Sorry, I'm just navigating with some. Something's up on my laptop here. Anyway, Spravato, $2 billion. Other CNS. All right. See how the rest of J&J went. Yeah, I don't know why they bought this. They never should have bought Actelion. J&J's done some bad deals. They did very bad deals. I would have never done that deal. Okay, Opsimit's not doing so bad. It's amazing how big the PAH market is. Infectious disease for J&J just basically doesn't exist anymore. Infectious disease is like the hardest business in biopharma. There's just nothing to do. What are you going to treat? What's left? Everything's cured. Yeah, so the real story with J&J, well, Buffett would say avoid pharma. But yeah, the real story with J&J is this new crop of drugs, but it's going to be very hard for them to replace Stelara and Darzalex when they go off patent. That's half the... Darzalex is already kind of dropping, but that's a third of the drug business right there. Pretty hard to replace that. Erlita's going to go generic at some point. The PAH franchise goes generic at some point. So you're dealing with more than half the portfolio sort of biosimilars or generics pretty soon. So what's gonna... Yeah, I mean, the next decade's gonna look pretty ugly for J&J unless they can figure out some new blockbusters. And Tecvayli, Talvi, Rybrevant, some of these are okay, but it's all going to be on Tremfya to carry it. But yeah, it's not such a great pipeline for J&J. Conditions are fine now, but it's not where they kind of want to be. Yeah, they love to acquire. I mean, not too innovative. I agree with that. Sorry, dudes. Yo.
Do you want a follow-up meeting with Shitan?
One sec. I'm on the live stream. Yeah, I'll message him. You can take it from here. Yep. That works. I can look at Sanofi. That is Fat Cat. Sorry, I had to block you for spamming our chat about explosive diarrhea. Oh, value guy, I don't think you know how many shares outstanding there are. I like SPRB. I think RX is trash. Nah, RX is just garbage. Oh. A lot of my ideas haven't changed much. I like Abivax. I joined this QCLS as an advisor, Sarepta, Spruce, shorting. I think AppLovin is a short. We might do an IPO for Goodell someday. Sure. I still think, I still think QC is a short for sure. But I think that my thinking evolved quite a lot on just like the behavioral, psychological aspects of it, where I understand why investors are chasing the next NVIDIA. I get it. Let's go, Dusty. I have to look at HubSpot. No, the problem with quantum is that quantum cannot work. There is no matmul speed up. So if you want to multiply two matrices, so n by, what is that? How do you do this? It's n by m matrices. Then in quantum regime, there is no speed up. You're at O of n cubed, roughly. Now, there's galaxy algorithms that can get you faster, like n to the 2.5, but that's basically it. And so that's whether you're quantum or GPU, you're stuck in n cubed complexity time. In photonics, you can actually do this in linear time. This is an O to 2N. Now, why? Why is it so special? It's a good question. I don't think... Yeah, I'm not going to... Just a billion is not what I'm after. If you can do matmoles faster than NVIDIA, there's a lot more than a billion at stake. So anyway, so how does photonics do this? Well, light does mathematics naturally. So if you have here's destructive interference. If you have wave 1, let me make a different color, and wave 2, I don't know about a trillion, but yes, NVIDIA is worth 5 trillion. So if you do matmoles faster than them, then that is a big prize. So if you take this, the interference is doing math by subtracting. That's destructive interference. So there's a lot of ways light can actually do linear operations and multiplications and stuff like that. So it does it naturally. It does Fourier transforms naturally. Light is just kind of an amazing mathematical tool. Electricity does its own thing. It gives rise to transistors, which have nonlinearity, and gates, which optical doesn't have that. So you have this pros and cons. In terms of the capital structure of QCLS, it's pretty messy. So if you look at the actual SEC filings, I do think that they'll fix themselves. I joked with my girl who just joined the board yesterday. I'm sure you guys saw that. Really exciting. OpenAI employee joining the board. So the company is $7 million. As of the last Q, they had 4.2 million shares outstanding, but that's unfortunately just the tip of the iceberg. You have Series F, G, H, and I, and D preferred stock. So all of that is, going to weigh on the company. Now, you'll see next quarter or the quarter after, I would imagine a lot of these preferred stock have converted and maybe even sold. So they're out. Hopefully, if they're not out, they will be soon. But I think they're all out. And that means that between the preferred stock and the warrants, everyone's converted their warrants, or the preferred stocks have been sold. So now I think it's just us, which is great, and just common stock. But I do think the shares outstanding, if you take all those into account, are, I'm not sure what they are, but, I can imagine them being 10 or 20 million. But we'll see the next K. Won't the thing that's producing light and changing the signal back into digital need to run an Odin and Cube? No, that's a really good question, Relic. I appreciate the pushback. It's very important. So the way I look at this problem is really interesting. You have sort of a digital analog converter here. The DAC, I don't know, maybe this is an API. You call my API, the DAC sends with some payload, maybe a prompt. The DAC converts the API to light. The light goes in the box. The box does the matmoles really fast. Now you need an answer, right? You need to go back from analog to digital. And now you got the API response. So there's a few things here, right? Cami, what's up, man? A lot of interesting pieces here. So you can make these two boxes as fast as you can. Ultimately, these are going to be 50 millisecond, even less probably, 1 to 50 millisecond sort of round trips. So if the inference time takes, I don't know, with a GPU, the inference time is 1 minute, or 1,000 seconds. Sorry, 60 seconds. Maybe with the photonic computer, it's, I don't know, 1 second for argument's sake. You get a substantial reduction, and the hiccups in the ADC and DAC aren't so bad. Now, if you need to put the ADC and DAC in the chip, because remember, in photonics, we don't have nonlinearity. So I do the matmul. Here's the nodes of the network in the first layer. This is, let's say, layer 1. This is layer 2. Now, after you do the matmuls, as you guys know, you have to do like a softmax or some other activation function. So you guys have probably seen this type of diagram before. You have this like all-to-all connection. And so you do the matmul. And you then have to do the softmax. So in here, again, you do this a million times, but you still need to do, after you aggregate all that, you still need to do the, your sigmoid or whatever activation function. You can't do these with optical, or can you? That's the question. And so if you do these with optics, you're doing a lot of innovation. And the classical way to do this is with the ADCs. So now you got to put these ADCs in here. And now you got Amdahl's law, where, between every layer, you have the speed bump. And that conversion speed bump probably kills any advantage you would get from the light. So how do I do matmuls really fast? Light. How do I do softmax and those things really fast? Electricity. But I don't want to go back and forth. So that is one of the main problems with photonic computing that has to be solved. But you solve that problem, and you go from n cubed to 2n, which is a revolution in computing. Again, what's made that possible is really interesting. You have a regime where 90%, right? 90% of the compute we care about today is AI, maybe more. Like Microsoft put something out that said it's 99% of cloud compute. The actual energy used is AI. So let's say it's 90%. And 90% of the time, the GPU is doing one thing, which is the matmul, which is a matrix multiplication, which is this guy here. Yeah, no, Cami, you should send me an email, martin@dl.software. So, look, there is a photonic computing industry. The people have thought about this and talked about this. Microsoft is a team, Taiwan Semi. There's some startups, but, there's a lot of academic labs. Tsinghua in China is really incredible. Yeah, thanks, Mason. Chelsea is wonderful. My partner, the mother of my baby. But she's also brilliant. MIT scientist. She taught me all this stuff. And whenever we watch a video about like silicon photonics or something, she's watching, I'm watching, trying to pay attention. She gets it right away. And I'm just like, huh, what? I have to watch this again. She makes me look very slow, which is hard to do, I'd say, but you might disagree. Anyway, 90% of compute is AI. 90% of AI is matmuls. You do have these activation functions that you have to get right, whether it's ReLU or whatever however you want to do this, softmax, all the networks are a little different. But ultimately, doing this guy is a bit of a thorn. The ADC, DAC steps are not exactly trivial. And again, if you have to do them like this, you really have killed the advantage. Now, some people, I've talked to photonic guys that disagree, that they actually don't think this is the end of the world if you do your pipelining correctly. But one of the problems with neural networks, as you know, is they cascade. So you actually do need the results from the first layer before you can calculate the second layer. There's no point. You can't calculate layers 1 through 256 or more, after, without having the results of one layer to use as inputs to the next layer. So you need to wait. And that speed bump here, is a serious speed bump, because this may take place in one, it's a really crazy thing, but you might be talking about, 1 nanosecond or less, possibly even a picosecond. Nature just does this so fast. You also have to load these weights in, and that's not trivial either. So there's a little bit of engineering there, and scaling these things is not easy, right? So I think it might be 5 to 10 years. Now, the difference between quantum, which is how we got started on this, in theory, if you could build a quantum computer, you would go from n cubed to n cubed. Which is why when you listen to the quantum companies, they don't say that they could help with AI. If you listen very carefully, they say that they could help with optimizing hyperparameters with AI. Just beating around the bush. It's not the same thing as running a neural network. That's optimizing the little details of how we do this, which is irrelevant. And they focus a lot on optimization problem, like the traveling salesman problem. Nobody cares about this. That's not even 1%. If 90% is AI and 10% is, I don't know what 10% would be, just classic number crunching compute, whether it's, let's see, search, list sorting, stuff like that. Database entries, database writes, things like this. That's what maybe the other 10% of compute in the world is used. None of that is traveling salesman or optimization. Maybe it's one millionth. Like doing a cubo, for example. When was the last time you wrote code that had a cubo in it? Cubo is quadratic, unconstrained binary optimization. Never. You don't need to do cubos. Yeah, the HSBC thing was fake. You can't load 1 million variables into a quantum computer. There's no RAM. That was a completely contrived paper. There's 100 bits in the damn machine. What are you going to put in 100 bits? I challenge you to make a photograph with 100 bits. How many? That's literally 100 ones and zeros. That's it. That's the amount of information. I think you could get your name down. Martin. Anyone know binary fluently? Binary to ASCII? Oh, I ran out of space. How are you going to put the whole bond market in a fucking quantum computer? Immediately that's a lie. Immediately it's a lie. They don't have any bandwidth. There's a byte. Yeah, they used they did use the simulator to show that the error of the computer was better. Everyone laughed at that paper. Let's not delude ourselves. So this byte means A. This byte means R. This byte means T. So let's see, with 8 bytes to a letter, an ASCII or what is it, UTF letter, I can get 64 and get 8. That's MARTIN space. I think I could put my name into IBM Quantum Computer. That's about it. My entire first and last name. It's a joke. 256 would be nice. Listen, 256, a working 256 qubit machine that I could connect to on the cloud would be impressive. IBM's at 150. But we really are going to need like a 10 million qubit machine, right? So like 256 is like, come on, man. You're wasting my time. So anyway, getting back to quantum and the question here, if you could build a quantum computer, which is still, you know, a very far off thing if you ask me. If you could build a working, scalable quantum computer, you don't get a matmul acceleration. You're still in the same place as everywhere else with much lower clock speed. We've talked about this many times, but the clock speed of quantum is like less than 1%, much less than 1% of a GPU. You got one core with no bandwidth and no RAM. So you'll never use this thing for matmuls, right? You're just going to use NVIDIA like everybody else. The only thing you might use it for, which again, I'm excited about, and I'm giving a talk in Miami actually at a conference called Wall Street Bets Live, which will be kind of fun. But it's going to be a serious conference because Charlie Shrem's going to be there as Bitcoin pioneer. And we talk about using quantum and other techniques to crack Bitcoin. But the point is that this complexity speed up, for the amazing thing about quantum is I can go from 2 to the n, which is exponential, to linear. I can go to, or polynomial at least, 3n squared or 3n cubed. Now this is the miracle, right? This is what quantum is all about. This is why quantum is the coolest thing ever to scientists, to mathematicians, to nerds, people like me. You know, we love this because how do you go from exponential to polynomial? It's kind of this miracle. You know, how do you do that? Well, it relies on quantum effects. We don't really have exploitable quantum effects in most computing that we can harness. And so this amazing, you know, discovery has propelled interest in making a quantum computer. Once we do it, I think we're going to get bored and realize that all this massive contraption to just do one class of algorithms, right? This is just for period finding, which is applicable in RSA and ECC. This is just to find, you know, to reverse a key in essence, by getting, you know, the right period. You can only do this with a quantum computer, but nobody needs this. There's almost no use case. You and I don't need it. NVIDIA doesn't need it. OpenAI doesn't need it. Microsoft doesn't need it. Anthropic doesn't need it. XAI doesn't need it. Otherwise, they'd be buying up quantum computing companies. They'd be doing deals with them all day long. You know, OpenAI is doing deals with what? Memory companies, compute companies. They have a huge deal with NVIDIA. So does Meta. Meta bought a chip startup. Meta's doing deals with TPUs. Where's all the deals with quantum? It's non-existent because this is the only algorithm that you get an advantage for. And it's for ECC or RSA, which is not at all unrelated to AI. So it's basically sort of useless. Yeah, D-Wave is even more of a joke, obviously. So in any event, a working quantum computer doesn't get you there. We don't have a really good photonic computer, but if you did build a really good one, you would shift the complexity class, not quite like the shift you get in quantum where you go from impossible to possible, which is kind of cool, but it's much faster. It's, you know, millions of times faster. So it's worth building. And the cool thing about this is people have built working quantum computers, working photonic computers, unlike quantum. So here's an example. Somebody, you know, people have done MNIST, for example. Let me see here. People have done MNIST multiple times with multiple different optical computers. So you can get like fairly good results, and other neural networks. So pretty impressive. Let's see. Pain in the ass. Let me use my other account here. Yeah, these are the Tsinghua guys. Lu Fang, he's the guy. And not just MNIST, but many other. There's fashion. There's like the fashion classifier. Yeah, so here's the classic MNIST. You know, is this a 1, 4, or 7? And you get a really remarkable classifier with a kind of a real neural network. And there's the another classifier model, the well-known CFAR test. So you have working prototypes out there, including from Microsoft. Let's look at how Microsoft did theirs. Anyway, I don't want to belabor this, but this is the Microsoft chip is pretty impressive. It's a different take, different architecture, using some analog stuff here. But there's MNIST and Fashion MNIST. That thing's a shoe if you can't see it. And so the Microsoft chip was able to do this just fine, or a sneaker. And you can see some of the stuff that I tried to draw myself, but much better drawn by Microsoft. And Microsoft is big in AI, and they understand that AI, AI's here it said, existing hardware demonstrates focus either on AI inference, which accounts for 90% of energy in commercial deployments, 90% of data center deployments. So in any event, I think, we'll have to see how that plays out. But I'm going to take my time. I mean, there's no rush. I got to use the restroom. I'll see you guys in 5-10 minutes. Hey, what's up? Sorry, when when nature calls you, you have to answer. %20 on one position? You're upset? Come on. AVXL, same shit, man. What have they announced? These clowns. I don't know. I wouldn't be president. I don't know. That would be a tough job. Yeah, I still think quantum is going to zero, but again, it's sort of a tough thing to short. As I said earlier, I understand why investors want to see the next, want to capture the next potential, big compute company. Agents for what? I like this yellow birdie. You want to teach me something about AI? You think you know more about AI than I do? I can't really give you life advice because I don't know you. People always want life advice, but I can't, without knowing you better, there's no way for me to really understand what you need help with. F2? No, I don't know what that is. I don't know when Spruce will go up, man. I'm sorry, stocks don't work that way. You just gotta buy and wait. If I knew the answer to that, we'd have infinite money. Yeah, RM is correct. Yeah, anytime, JD. Micron, SanDisk, out of control, yeah. Aha. Found my culprit. Maybe. No, Joe. I mean, I certainly mistimed the bubble. I mean, I know plenty of people that bought Spruce at 30 or 40. I mean, I don't know. It went up a lot. Some people took profits. They didn't have the diamond hands. I think Saylor's going to lose all his money in Bitcoin, or all the Bitcoin money soon. Yeah, I don't really care about Rivian or know much about autos, so not much for me to do there. Yeah, Trump sounds like he's finna go to war. Is Spruce a $1 billion company? Yeah, definitely. Hard to imagine an enzyme replacement therapy not being worth $1 billion. Did I skip oncology somehow? I'll check if we have Greenland users. That'll be interesting. I mean, what are you going to do with crypto? It's kind of dog poo poo. No, Spruce isn't a binary. They had clear clinical trial results. They have to get FDA approval, but it looks like they'll get it. I haven't looked at Ocular in a while. haven't talked to Ghostface in a while. Memory's great. I mean, memory's simpler than chips. So the question is like, will there be, a bottleneck? There almost always is in memory. Bottleneck gets alleviated, and then there's a flood, just a huge supply flood. I don't know if Ocular is going to help them with Dupixent. They got a huge amount to get through there. $2026 guidance for J&J. I guess it did this disappoint people? It's only down 1%. That looked pretty fine to me. All right, somebody's asking for TCRX, which is T-Scan Therapeutics, a microcap. I guess I'll look at it. Fuck it. Never heard of it. T-Scan. TCRX. All right, tscan.com. Unleash immunity. Okay. Yeah, right. I've talked about Intelia for years. Could be interesting. It's been a dog. Fucking nightmare. Yeah. It's not about digital, it's about electronic, and then there's ENOB, effective numbers of bits, effective number of bits. Anytime, David. Don't forget to take profit. No, don't look at iBio. I'll look at it later, though. A lot of retail is in iBio. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Oh, wait, T-Scan is 184 million? That seems crazy. How? Oh, okay. The warrants. Got it. Okay, so it's not really below cash by much. I don't know. It depends on your style, David. Yeah, I mean, you want to keep it, keep it. I'm not saying it's a bad company or anything, but sometimes if you make a lot of money in a stock, you... Nice, WT. I'm still short some quantum, too.
That drug pharmacy dude, Martin, what's his name?
Martin Shkreli.
Shkreli.
No, I never took the CFA. Okay, so T-Scan's basically trading around cash. No enterprise value. Love the biotech votes of confidence. Tough space to be in. Interesting. I don't think you have to pivot too much. Software engineers are still doing fine. We're hiring a software engineer for $300,000 or so. No, I'm good. Yeah. Yeah, I have to look at that data, Hoop Fan. I have accounts. I just don't know if I should be trading live. It's just a lot of work.
Hello, and welcome to the GAN Virtual KOL call. We ask that you please hold all questions until the completion of the formal remarks, at which time you will be given instructions for the question and answer session. Also, as a reminder, this conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, please disconnect at this time. With that, I would like to turn the call over to Gavin McBeath, PhD, Chief Executive Officer. Mr. McBeath, you may begin.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. So we're excited to be here to present our updated data that we presented at the American Society of Hematology conference over the weekend, as well as some insight into the market opportunity for TSC-101. And I do want to remind people that we are a publicly traded company, and so we will be making forward-looking statements during this talk. So I'm joined today by Dr. Ran Reshef, who is the Director of Translational Research and the Director of the Blood and Marrow Transplantation Program at Columbia University Irving Medical Center. I'm also joined by our Senior Vice President of Market Access, Stephen Camiolo, as well as our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Crystal Lewis, who will join us for the Q&A session at the end. So I'm going to start by giving you a brief overview of the HEME program and then turn it over to Dr. Reshef to go through the recently updated data. So just as a general introduction to TScan, we're a fully integrated next-generation TCR T-cell therapy company, and our lead program is in heme malignancies. This is the program we're discussing this morning, where we have really promising data in the area of transplantation, where we're working to treat residual disease and prevent relapse in patients undergoing allogeneic transplantation. And so based on these exciting data, we intend to launch a pivotal study of TSC-101 in the second quarter of next year. In addition to that, we have a preclinical program in solid tumors. So we've had a clinical program developing various TCR T-cell therapies for solid tumors. We're now moving that program back to preclinical in order to develop an in vivo engineering platform to deliver multiplex TCR T-cell therapy therapy in solid tumors. And then finally, one of the core strengths of TScan is our target discovery platform. And so we continue to use that platform to discover novel autoantigen targets in autoimmunity. So with that, I'm going to turn to the heme malignancies program and really start by just outlining what it is that we're doing and the key unmet need. So as many of you know, for patients with AML and MDS, really the only curative therapy for these patients is to get an allogeneic hematopoietic cell transplant. In fact, this is a very effective therapy. Many patients are cured by this treatment. However, unfortunately, the leading cause of death in transplantation is relapse. And for patients undergoing transplant with reduced intensity conditioning, approximately 40% of patients will relapse within the first 2 years. And if they do relapse, the prognosis is very poor. Unfortunately, about 80% of those patients will pass away within 2 years of relapse. So our approach is to use a cell therapy product to target any residual cancer in these patients and so prevent relapse following hematopoietic cell transplantation. And so the way we're doing this is we identify a patient who would qualify for our therapy. In this case, to qualify for TSC-101, you need to have the HLA type A0201. And we would pair that patient with a donor who is HLA A02 negative. And so in that setting, all of the cells in the patient, all their blood cells would express the antigen HA2, whereas the donor cells would not express HA2. They would be HA2 negative. So the first step is that this patient undergoes a regular, standard of care hematopoietic cell transplantation. They receive stem cells from the donor after conditioning therapy. And so following the transplant, all their new blood cells are donor-derived and are HA2 negative. So the way we treat any residual cancer in this patient is we take T cells from the donor and we genetically engineer them to express
additional sites, and we anticipate launching to eradicate. It says any CR.
The patients, in addition, receive 2 infusions of engineered T cells. The first infusion, typically about 21 days post-transplant, and the second infusions are donor-derived and are HA2 negative. So the way we treat any residual cancer in this patient is we take T cells from the donor and we genetically engineer them to express a T cell receptor that recognizes the antigen HA2. And then while the patient's still in the hospital, as they've recovered from the transplant, we then give them their first infusion of engineered T cells. And at that point, those engineered T cells will target any residual patient-derived blood cells, including the cancer cells, but not touch any of their new healthy donor-derived cells, which are all HA2 negative. So it's a very clean way to target residual disease to prevent relapse in these patients. So we've, for the last several years, had an ongoing phase 1 study called the ALOHA study, in which we've been treating subjects with AML, ALL, and MDS with this therapy. And so this study has included 2 arms, a treatment arm as well as a control arm. In the control arm, patients are undergoing regular standard of care hematopoietic cell transplant with reduced intensity conditioning, whereas in the treatment arm, the patients, in addition, receive 2 infusions of engineered T cells. The first infusion, typically about 21 days post-transplant, and the second infusion, approximately 40 days after their first infusion. And obviously, the primary endpoint in this study is to assess safety, but we've also been able to assess preliminary efficacy in this study. And so we're excited to present updated data at ASH over the weekend. And this includes data on patients that have been on study now for over 2 years. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Reshef, who will take you through the recent updated data.
Thank you, Gavin. I'm delighted to be here and present the data that was shown over this weekend, which is updated as of September 2025. As you can see here, we've enrolled 23 patients on the TSC 101 arm. And as you already know, there is a control arm on this phase 1 study, which allows us to compare both the efficacy and the safety of this approach. You could see that we are, in fact, approaching 3 years from the first patient treated. As you could see, the median time from transplant is now 13 months on the TSC 101 arm, median age of 65, which is very typical for reduced intensity transplants. And what's important to point out is that the majority of these patients, as is typical for this age range, are very high risk. So 2/3 of the patients had AML. We have about 1/3 of the patients on the TSC 101 arm with a TP53 mutation, which carries a very dismal prognosis, even in the setting of an allogeneic transplant with the curative intent. 2/3 of the patients had some form of adverse risk, either by molecular mutations or by cytogenetic risks. There are very specific tables and guidelines to designate what's considered adverse risk in AML and MDS. And what's very important is that 2/3 of the patients had MRD positive disease prior to going to transplant. So this together puts us at about 79% of the patients in the TSC 101 arm having very high-risk disease. And in fact, more than half of the patients were also beyond first remission, which is another high-risk category. And as you can see, the arms here are relatively balanced, but if anything, the TSC 101 arm is slightly more enriched for high-risk patients. Next slide, please. So toxicity has been extremely benign. The TSC 101 infusion compared to other types of cellular immunotherapies is extremely well tolerated. There were no dose-limiting toxicities reported. There was no increase in incidence of chronic graft-versus-host disease. There were some cases of acute graft-versus-host disease, which is as expected in patients undergoing a transplant. CRS, just to avoid any confusion, where it says any CRS, that contains cases of cytokine release syndrome occurring even prior to administration of the cells, because in the type of transplant platform that we used, using post-transplant cyclophosphamide, cytokine release syndrome is essential part of the transplant itself. So it has nothing to do with the cells. Where you see treatment emergent CRS, those are truly the cases that occurred after TSC 101 infusion. You could see only 3 cases that were grade 1 or 2 and resolved quite quickly. There was 1 case of ICANS grade 2 with changes in mental status after the second infusion in a patient who had relapsing disease, which was treated and resolved within less than 24 hours. So the toxicity profile is very benign for a cell therapy. So this is, of course, a very busy slide at this point with that many patients enrolled on both arms. But what I would like to point out is maybe two things. First of all, the red squares and the blue squares indicate patients who are MRD positive and MRD negative. And as you could see on the TSC 101 arm, there were plenty of patients who were MRD positive prior to transplant, and some patients even MRD
Oh, sorry, I forgot about that. I've been talking to myself. Wow, quantum is getting crushed. How's Adaptimmune doing? Oof. Adaptimmune. Is Adaptimmune gone? What happened to Adaptimmune? Pink sheets. Damn. 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 Long gone. Well, 55 million to US World Meds. I like the US World Meds guys. I know they're pretty bright. Oh, Ethereum. So congested. My cats give me so much allergies. TCR Therapeutics. Another dead company. Well, Maddox is doing okay. The data are a little spotty with those p-values of 0.5, but it is hard to show survival benefit in 40 patients, but I'm not sure that signal is really that great. Bitcoin's down a ton. I'm going to go to an allergist a little later. Exciting. It's definitely interesting as a speculative idea, but TCR therapies have been a tough place to be. But ematics, might be worth looking at ematics. They're drilling outside my office. It's pounding into my head. Annoying. Trying to find a new office in New York. It's a little annoying. Ematics. No ematics model. Let's check it out. Supreme Court's gonna get in Trump's way? Um, where are you headed? Yeah, I'll take the usual. Yep. I'm not a big fan of SLS. Yeah, being locked in is critical. I don't know why I opened this. Oh, I see. I was trolling about President Xi last night. Yeah, usual Chick-fil-A. Yeah. I just don't know when they're going to have data. It's taken forever. You know? Forget Ematix is a foreign company. I like Corvus. Yeah, Quantum's getting hit. Yeah, exactly, Grizzly. They'll never die. I'm sitting here feeling sad. Why couldn't my dad have AML and be in that trial? It's not fair. It's a pretty dark joke. Miss my dad. Shout out to the legend. Oh, is there a new season, Michael? Oh. This guy's have ass loads of cash. Ematix. Euros. We're mostly just raising from institutions now. No more moms and pops. We closed our seed round, so Series A is next. Yeah, we all have to miss our parents, and then one day we'll be missed as well. It's terribly sad to think about. It's best not to overthink it. I get so bummed out when I think about that stuff. But you do come to terms with it over time, I think. I never got nightmares over Capper. I mean, you win some, you lose some. It's okay. Series A for one investor? I mean, you could do $500,000 in a Series A, $250,000. I don't think it's... I mean, if you're going to raise, 10 or 20, maybe even more... you know, you're not going to take 25 grand or 50 grand. It's kind of a waste of time. But, you know, you do 100K or more. But again, you know, Series A, it's not like a safe, like you really do have to get all the money together and raise it all at once. And get people prepared and ready to like your company. And funding cycles, I mean, it's not much to it. Pre-seed, you're just kind of you and some friends just kickstarting stuff. Seed is a little more serious. Usually, you know, pre-seed, you're raising anywhere from 0 to maybe a million or two. But then the seed round, you know, you can raise anywhere from a couple mil to, you know, sky's really the limit. But what's up, Fooled? A Series A, you know, I'd say bare minimum is 10, but some people raise 100. Things have changed a lot in the Valley. You know, everything's changed. You know, there's a lot that's changed. Yeah, we would do it, Howdy. I mean, the problem is we closed our seed round, so we don't want to raise at the old valuation. We made a lot of progress. We have a good amount of revenue now. Yeah, I don't think it matters who owns Greenland. Yeah, subscriptions. Yeah. We have about 15 employees. QCLS update. There was a press release yesterday. My life partner, mother of my child, wifey, but not my wife, is joining the board of directors of QCLS. So they're really focused on this PRAME. Yeah, Martin at dl.software is my email address. You're more than welcome to shoot in a resume, especially if you're a financial programmer. That's kind of what we're looking for. People who have experience programming, stock market, things like that. Starting your own investment fund? I don't know. It's a tough gig. Let's see here. Sanuwave. I don't know these guys that well. Lithotripsy? ServiceNow? Regenix Bio? I don't know what the goal is, Howdy. I think just create as much revenue and value as possible. You know, Bloomberg is too overlapping. We have too much beef with them to probably ever sell to them, but we could sell to S&P, LSEG. There's a bunch of good companies we would not mind selling to. Yeah, Baker is in IMTX. That's it's interesting. Oh, peer review was re-offed? Is that true, Deuce? How does this work? Oh, wow. Oh, wait. Remibrutinib was approved. What even is this drug from UCB? Oh, I know that drug. Capper, I think it's just a fraud, but we'll see what the FDA says. I think FDA agrees. Old company. If you're short, I don't think you get anything from the lawsuit. We should. Shit. Obefazimod? Isn't this the Abivax drug? Am I familiar with it? My man. What is you talking about? Here's my printer. There it is. I think we're all in obefazimod. I'll be fine. Stop crying about spruce. Oh, that is kind of crazy, Carvisk. WTF. I don't know if Bitcoin's gonna rally or not. Automation's a tough concept for a lot of people. Don't want it. It depends on what you're trying to do. Yeah, right. Never lived in Chicago, no. Haven't even really been that often. Be right back.